It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. Jay Baruchel's an actor. Maybe you've seen him on the FXX show Man Seeking Woman. He starred in the How to Train Your Dragon movies as the voice of Hiccup. He also starred on Judd Apatow's cult classic sitcom Undeclared. This year, Jay directed his first ever feature-length movie. It's called Goon, Last of the Enforcers. It's a sequel to Goon, another cult classic, and one that Jay helped write and co-starred in. The movies tell the story of a really specific kind of hockey player, an enforcer. The guy who, whose job it is to have everyone's back, and specifically to beat up whoever needs to get beaten up on the other team. The enforcer's name is Doug Glatt, and he's played wonderfully by Seann William Scott. Doug was originally a bouncer. Then, after he handles a fight, he gets recruited by a pro hockey team and leads them to glory. In the next movie, directed by Jay, Scott's character's hurt. He's retired, he's taken an office job, but it's hard for him to adjust, so he tries to make a comeback. In this scene from Goon, Last of the Enforcers, Glatt's meeting with his mentor and former nemesis, Ross Ray. He's hoping that Ray can help him get back on the ice.
Will you train me?
Train you to what?
Teach me to fight with my left. Teach me to skate better.
What the do I know about skating, Doug? You see what I do in there?
We can train another time if you're not able to right now. There's a restaurant nearby that sells hot dogs. We could just eat those instead.
Hot dogs?
Yeah, it's like a sausage sandwich.
I know what a hot dog
Looks
is.
like a...
Jay, welcome to Bullseye. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
I know that you're a really passionate hockey fan.
Indeed.
Are you someone who would prefer to see hockey with or without goons?
Oh yeah, very, very much so. I am firmly entrenched on the that side of the debate. That's the hockey I was raised to appreciate. It's an intrinsic part of it.
I am upset, and I will say I'm not a big hockey fan, but as a football fan,
Yeah.
I'm upset that I've had to deal with the moral consequences of being a football fan
Sure.
recently. Like, the whole point of being a sports fan is not to deal with to substitute ersatz moral consequences
Yes.
for actual moral consequences.
Yes.
And I feel like...
You feel guilty now.
Now I feel bad
Yeah.
because everyone is ruining their lives for my entertainment.
Right. Except yes, but I don't know how many of them would have it any other way.
Yeah,
That's the
fair.
question. That's the thing, and that's the sort of big kind of true gray area. And I don't know how many narratives kind of reflect this, but it's like it's more about smoking a pack of cigarettes. You know what's harmful, and you elect to. And so I think it's about making sure that everyone has the appropriate amount of info and the right info for the context, but then they should put that context themselves, and they should decide, I think.
Once I interviewed Terry Crews, who's a brilliant comic actor, but also played in the NFL for a little while.
Right.
And one of the things that he told me about playing in the NFL was he told me very sincerely, very directly, with the exception possibly of a few quarterbacks, everyone who chooses to play in the NFL is broken in some way.
Right.
And I don't just mean physically broken.
Sure,
I mean like emotionally,
Yeah.
like their life is broken.
Yeah, right.
And the NFL is essentially just like a place to go to try and fail to fill holes inside them related
Holy-
to their fathers or whatever. You know what I mean?
Hell, okay. That's not to put too fine a point on it.
Right? I mean, the second part was my sort of interpretation of what he was saying, but
Oh,
yeah.
no, 100%. But I don't know that there's... I think there's those type of people in every non-traditional job. I think actors, musicians, find me a functioning stand-up comic who's like a normal person. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's just something, the same way that they say every actor is like someone desperate for attention and approval and didn't get enough love in high school and all that same shit. We're all steered on to these sort of, bespoke career choices, and I think it's all, there's a common thread in all of it.
People ask me about comics all the time because I know a lot of comics, and I think there's a sequence in your movie where Seann William Scott's character, the Goon, goes and tries to work at an insurance company, and the problem for someone who's that driven to do something like play hockey is that there's no way to do that at an insurance company. Not just to not play hockey, but there's like the same intensity and obsession that makes someone a successful artist or a successful athlete, the kind of focus and time that's required. That just isn't reflected in normal life.
No, there's no answer to it. And it's hard to mean what you mean in the context of a game to find that in an office. Do you know what I mean? Like that. Like there's just sports is a stuff of great drama for a reason. There aren't a ton of great office dramas, and so 100%. And I think it begs a very interesting question, which is like, what do you do when your calling is with you? Like so many people don't have a calling. Most people, I think, don't. And if you're one of the few who finds what you're quote-unquote meant to do, well, that's a weight off your shoulders and what a beautiful thing. But what if that thing that you're meant to do is finite and, in fact, is hurting you and you up in a big way? You're going to have to make some pretty heavy decisions at a certain point.
Let's hear another scene from Goon, Last of the Enforcers.
Terrific.
Basically, Seann William Scott plays Doug the Thug Glatt, who is a goon from the first film, Goon. And it's his job on the ice, essentially, almost exclusively to beat people up. And he has what looks like it's going to be a career-ending injury in a fight on the ice, and has to take a job because his wife is pregnant. And so this is him having a beer with his teammates who are now his former teammates.
So, Dougie, how's that new job going?
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah, there's all these documents, you know. I get to bring a thermos to work, which keeps my food hot and cold. Sometimes I put hamburgers in there. It's up to me.
He's psyched whenever he can exert any agency.
I think one of the nice things about these movies is that Seann William Scott is such a winning guy. He has such a twinkle in his eye.
He does.
And he's also, extraordinarily handsome while also being a little goofy looking. Yep. That he can carry the lead in a film while still being an almost like Homer Simpson level dumb person.
Yeah. It's amazing. We kept thinking we'd hit the ceiling. It's like there's no way the audience is going to buy that he doesn't know how to spell his name correctly. And he writes Doug D-U-G. But I assume, I'd like to think we can get away with all that stuff because as arch as he is a character, because it's not, it's not a documentary, it's just a character in an opera. But I think it's still, there's, for whatever reason, your bullshit detector doesn't go off because I think it comes from an earnest place, and he's playing guys. He's playing a big version, but he's playing a version of very real men. And now, no hockey player I've ever met is quite as dumb as Doug is, but
they're dumb, and you'd like them to come talk to you about that.
I didn't say that. Hey, no, quite the opposite.
All you're saying is that hockey players, the bigger they are, the dumber they are. They're just a bunch of big dumb goobers.
I don't recall.
And if they have a problem with that, they should talk to you.
Well, this is NPR. I did not say that. No, There's. Okay, look. You root for somebody honest and kind, and it helps. It makes it even more palatable if they don't know, if they're never as smart as the situation they find themselves in.
Was it intentional to make both this film and the first Goon movie as brutal as they are?
Yes.
Why did you want to make what is ultimately a pretty light comedy so intensely violent?
Yeah. So I can't speak to the aesthetic of the first one because I didn't direct it. My friend Michael did. Michael Dowse. I had a large, although he did film the that we wrote. So, but it was a decision we made. We wanted to make a puck opera. Yes, it's funny and it's accessible that way, but we wanted to sneak our kind of everything else in on people. And so I think the sort of substance sneaks up on people in our movies. And because the constant thing I hear is, I didn't expect to care as much, and the violence is part of that. But mind you, we don't ever depict any one fight the same way. Right? Like there are different types of violence depending on what the fight is. Some of our fights have a goofy or comedic function. Some of them are meant to be 100% purely negative. Some of them are both supposed to be stressful and engaging, like a classic movie fight where you hope your hero triumphs. But all we were trying to do is take these ingredients that to us we found what made the most interesting parts of watching hockey and just heighten them to an operatic cinematic extent.
It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. My guest is Jay Baruchel. He wrote and directed the new movie Goon, Last of the Enforcers. You play as an actor often, not in the Goon movies where you play the mook to end all mooks, basically.
Yep.
Your character, I saw you describe your character in the Goon movies as being like a caricature of the 19-year-old Bostonians who had come to Montreal to get drunk.
That's precisely right.
Which, I mean, I can imagine the backwards baseball caps.
Buddy.
Like that situation.
Every Patty and Sully in all of Massachusetts.
It's very vivid.
Yeah.
I've been to a Red Sox game.
Okay, God bless you.
So I know that kind of thing you're talking about, but generally you're called upon to play skinny nebbishes on account of you being skinny and nebbishy.
Yep.
Aesthetically,
yeah,
visually looking. You were the star of a real favorite TV show of mine of the last few years called Man Seeking Woman.
Oh, wicked. Thanks, man.
Which was almost a sketch comedy show set in the mind of scared nebbish looking for love, wherein every kind of fantastical scenario played itself out on the grandest stage possible.
But it was always born of something super clumsy and intimate.
Yeah, so I'm going to play a clip. He has this best friend who's played by Eric Andre, who is if anyone's ever seen the Eric Andre show or any of his work, like he's like the most compelling guy in the world. Yep. And his character never has any trouble meeting women or finding girls. And we see everything sort of through your character's eyes, Jay, and the fantastical scenarios play out from there. And in this one, we sort of find out the fantastical version of why Eric Andre's character can always meet chicks.
All right.
1 second. What's up, girl?
What's up?
See you on the dance floor.
Can't wait.
See?
I've never seen that before in my life. Your eyes turn into these spinning
hypnotic spirals, right? Spiralize.
Well, how did you learn to do that?
What, the same way everybody learns. The day I hit puberty, a wizard appeared and taught me. Did that not happen to you?
No.
Are you sure? A tall guy, pointy hat, he had a long white beard.
Yes, I know what a wizard looks like. I'm saying I've never met one.
Hold on, wait a minute, stop. If you can't do spiralize, how do you hit on girls?
I don't know. I just walk up to them and say random stuff. That's good stuff right there. That's some classic Simon Rich.
Well, yes. Well, Simon who is the creator of the show, one of the most brilliant and funny people that I've ever met.
Yeah.
And also one of the few who are small, like obviously smaller and frailer than you are.
Yeah, I know. No, I know. He's tiny. I'm the alpha male framed next to him.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason I said yes to the show.
But how do you feel about the fact that so much of your career, starting with Undeclared, the show that gave you much of your career, has been playing confused and afraid adolescents, no matter what age they may be?
Yeah. I've got if my great raison d'être was to be an actor, I might take issue with it. But it never was. And I love and respect this craft, and it's afforded me and my mother and my sister lives we never would have otherwise had. It took us out of, we weren't unpoor, okay? And so we went into another strata because of this. And I have consistently been able to work since I was 12, and I'm 35 now. And most actors, less than 20% can feed themselves off of acting. So I've been able to string it for over a decade. And for me, all I've ever wanted to do is write and direct horror movies and action movies. And acting was always a means of being on set and getting to work with people and learn the craft. So this is all to say that I'm fine with it, because it's not like, oh, I don't have the career that I'm hoping for. My ambitions lie outside of acting. And so I'm just psyched to have been able to do it as long as I've done it. And I'm psyched to do the things that I've done. But yeah, I suppose it would bug me more if I was trying to do this forever.
I want to play something from Undeclared, which was the show that brought you to American audiences, certainly. I mean, Canadian audiences already knew you from Popular Science for Kids, the long-running Canadian children's television show, which you co-hosted.
I did for one season. Popular Mechanics for Kids.
Popular Mechanic, thank you.
You're welcome.
We didn't pull any clips for that out of respect to you.
Thanks, man.
So your character on the show Undeclared, which was a one-season sitcom, but a really wonderful one, was a college freshman who kind of gets to college and is trying to figure it out.
Yep.
And it was in some ways the kind of slightly sitcom-ier college analog to Freaks and Geeks in high school. Yeah. And among the cast of the show were Seth Rogen and Jason Segel and some other folks who we've known. The lot of you have worked together in one capacity or other for 15 years now. And so anyway, in this clip, your character, Jay, whose name is Steven, is pumping himself up on his way to college.
Oh, God.
60% of all people meet their spouses at college. That means my future wife could be like seated right beside me.
You and a girl.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, why not? Exactly, because these girls at college, they don't know me. They don't know who I am.
Yeah. They don't know that you threw up on the bus in 5th grade.
Exactly.
That you had to have your finger reattached after that wood shop.
The point is, I'm tall and handsome and I've gained weight and I've like finally got a fashion sense. Man, it's like the beginning of a whole new era.
So stupid. that exercise machine I'm on as well is a great sight gag that you're missing out on.
I think it's rare to find someone, especially in the world of stand-up comedy where Judd Apatow came from, who is as committed to facilitation of creativity as Judd Apatow is. I mean, Judd Apatow is a talented creator in his own right and has made some really great movies himself, but a huge part of his life is dedicated to finding what's really great about other people's creativity as a producer. And I wonder what you learned from having had that experience on what was a really great show when you were a very young actor.
Yeah, I mean, it was especially for me coming out of not just kids' TV, but Canadian kids' TV, the idea that you might be able to just make something up and that would be on television is crazy. And so being afforded that kind of liberty and creativity was kind of really cool. You just got to paint with all sorts of colors, and it none of it might end up in there, but you're still allowed the chance to do it. It was it spoilt me in a way. And some other people have this sort of similar process. Like Stiller came up with Apatow on the Stiller Show, and so they each have kind of cousins of the same process, basically.
Seems like a lot of people got a lot out of working with Gary Shandling as well.
Big time.
On Larry Sanders.
Big time, yeah. No, there's something in the water in that era of because that's also my favorite SNL as well. And look, they're all still going, and also there was a real snobby thing on our set where we were all convinced that we were making the best show on television, and so we had a very kind of Johnny Marr approach to the whole thing. We just thought we were better than everybody, or Godspeed You Black Emperor is maybe closer, and so when we got canceled, like, yeah, of course, and what's so neat though is that like. When I don't watch it often, but if ever I sit down and watch a bit of Undeclared, I see, to me, it is the Melvins to current comedies Nirvana. kind of. You know, I see the type of the rhythm and the music we're speaking in and the types of things we're making jokes about, and the types of things we're mining for stories was sort of, there was no precedent before us. Like, I remember literally the biggest issue for Fox is that we didn't have a laugh track. How would people know that we're a comedy if there's no laughing? And I know that sounds crazy to anyone listening now who didn't grow up in the 90s, but like there weren't any other really half-hour single-camera comedies. You know, we kind of broke new ground, and like, you know, like many sort of trailblazers, we paid a kind of crummy price for it, and then but a whole other generation were kind of inspired by what we did, and and fared far better than we did.
One of the things that I really love about comedy in the last 15 years that comes substantially from the well of Larry Sanders leading into Freaks and Geeks and Undeclared is the extent to which it is driven by emotion. Very sincere emotion rather than clever jokes or
weird
a
situations.
general anger.
Yeah. No, agreed. It was like people kind of clued into something that that people are funny and people are made of emotions, and therefore emotions would be funny as well. But that's a hard thing to eventually get to, right? Like that to me is like the sort of another music reference, the Joy Division approach to punk, which is introspective and not about like Margaret Thatcher or whatever. It's much more. It's describing Kierkegaard and the concentration camps and what it's like to have epilepsy. And we had. Comedy had versions of that, but it always sounded like someone reading their diary entries, or it was how the world is, and I'm this great sort of anti-hero, But it was still the same kind of setup. And what I think has been very good for American comedy is the British influence that we always grew up with in Canada. And I suspect that's one of the reasons why Canadians have always been overrepresented in American comedy is we grow up versed in all the same source of material that you guys do, plus we grow up watching all these British shows that you guys don't, and then we have our own as well. And so that's that Canadian sense of humor. It's equal parts kind of quintessential American and British. It's equal parts ad-libby and Gilbert and Sullivan. And I think that all of these things have come to a point where people can be funny and a scene can be just about what somebody's feeling. Yeah, so I think it's a really lovely thing that was bound to happen eventually.
It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. I'm talking with Jay Baruchel. He's an actor. He's also a comic. He wrote and directed the new sports movie, Goon, Last of the Enforcers. You're from Montreal.
Yep.
And I think people who haven't been to Montreal have ideas of what Montreal is. Mm-hmm. What do you think people are right and wrong about the city of Montreal?
I think they're right about it being the snobbiest, leftiest, artsiest town in North America. Like this whole sort of cult of personality around Portland is utter nonsense. Nobody's ever been to Mile End then, and we were doing it long before it was in vogue. So that's all a thing. It is very European. It is highly romantic. The food is as good as everyone thinks. What I think they don't get is how multicultural it is. That half the city is French, not the entire city. So the province it's in Quebec is mostly French. There's like 7 million people, 89% of whom are French speakers. Almost the entirety of the Anglo population of Quebec is in Montreal. So half of that city is a Montreal that never gets reported because it's not sexy and interesting. And it's underreported within Canada as well. Like I've often said back home that if you watched English language movies from the rest of Canada, you'd never know that any English communities existed in Montreal. If you watched French movies from Quebec, you'd never know that we were there. I've been able to make 2 in my life, 2 Anglo-Canadian movies. I also don't think people realize that it's... These 2 forms in this town that seem completely antithetical, but for whatever reason have found a home. It is, at turns, incredibly, like I said, artsy and all that stuff. But it is also an incredibly blue-collar town, and it is by far the most crooked city in North America. There are corruption inquiries every single year. We are what the Carabinieri in Italy called the key to the lock that is New York. We are positioned perfectly above Manhattan, all the crime families there, and with far less lax than American customs. And so Sicily goes through Montreal to get to New York.
You had a full-on TED Talk.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, you were ready to go on Montreal.
Well,
locked and loaded.
Montreal crime history is a passion of mine.
Well, Jay, thank you for taking all this time to be on Bullseye. It was really great to get to meet you and talk to you.
Really? Thanks, man. Thank you for having me.
Really?
For real. I appreciate that. That's so nice. Thanks, man. It was lovely to be here.
Jay Baruchel. His movie Goon, Last of the Enforcers is in select theaters and on VOD September 1st. You can check out the first film in the franchise, Goon, which has a well-earned reputation as a cult classic. Both of them are genuine and funny and also spectacularly violent. I want you to be prepared for that. A lot of blood in these movies, but they're funny.